Have you ever driven your car after watching a full-on car chase in a movie? Not a good idea. If you're watching an action movie of cars, you know there's going to be some great feats of driving skill, and there are some staples of badass driving that you see in most of them. This is a 6 Degrees trope deep dive, where we show you 6 examples of your favourite tropes in the movies. Today, the badass driving trope. What is a trope though? Well, head here for an explanation. The badass driver trope is a staple of action movies. What better way to show the skill of your protagonist than to have them manoeuvre a car in ridiculous ways? Some believable, some frankly not. Bullitt has always been regarded as the OG of the car chase scene, and look, it's got some decent driving and it's good and it holds up, but modern movies have taken it to the next level. So let's start with number 6. The clues in my name is Baby Driver. Baby has tinnitus from a car crash when he was a kid, so he's always listening to some obscure music on his iPod, and that makes him an absolute demon behind the wheel. He's also inexplicably some kind of amazing free runner. Okay, fine. The whole film is in time to music, which just makes everything more cool. This car chase has all the staples. He starts with a little bit of backwards driving. He has a very nice J-turn in there, a very common move in car chases where you reverse, whack the steering wheel round to face forward and then carry on. He also uses his handbrake to swerve around other cars where usually that's used to skid round a corner. The money shot in this scene though is the double J-turn in the alley to avoid a truck. This, interestingly, was filmed without those trucks there. They were put in post because, look, stunt drivers are good, but they're not that good. And this is followed by a bit of Tokyo drifting through 180 degrees. And then he uses a bit of car foo to knock the spikes into the path of the police car. Very nice. Unfortunately, after all that, he ends up on a road with about 10 cars behind him. So was all that worth? It does make for a nice shot, though. As we'll see in this video, you have to have a bit where you drive the wrong way up a road. Even though they don't do much swerving in this one, it's low effort. And then there's an incredible bit of luck where he sees 2 red cars driving next to each other. They've even got the same bloody sunroofs. I would be interested to know what his plan was otherwise, but it is nice how he changes position under the bridge with them though. So he's escaped the cops, but he's still bloody drifting around the streets even though they're basically scot-free. Just play it cool, baby, for crying out loud. Vox actually mapped out the route they took through Atlanta, which is very interesting. And there's another chase later on with an absolute Terminator dude chasing them with some hilarious bits with Mike Myers masks, but it's not quite as good as this opener. Now, this one connects to number 5 through the car and the driver. He's in a 2006 Subaru Impreza WRX GD. And our next driver is also in a Subaru Impreza. It's Eggsy in number 5, Kingsman. A bit of a shorter one this, but it's in such a good film. Eggsy's another prodigy just like Baby Driver. At least his parkour skills are explained though, he did gymnastics. And here he nicks the comedy bad guy's car keys and then his Subaru Impreza. Same car as Baby, but in yellow. This one's got a great soundtrack. Bonkers. First of all, he shows off with some donuts. Oh, takes me back to my days living near a massive supermarket car park. And it starts off as just a joyride, but it then quickly turns into a chase when the police get involved. And it's especially nice because he does the whole thing in reverse. That is bloody hard. He's employing a few tropes here. He's taking the time to wave, he's going backwards, and he's going on the wrong side of the road, which is why I like this scene. It shows the natural skill this boy's got. And it also shows at the end that he's a good egg because he ends up getting busted as he avoids the fox in the road. It's a pet the dog moment, a classic tactic to show that he's only a little bit of a wrong and it's okay to like him. So someone who does a bit of backwards driving in his car chase is a man with no name. In number 4, with a title like Drive, it's obviously about driving. So my second favourite Ryan, the baby goose one, he's just called Driver this time, and he's not like the first 2 drivers in this list, especially the way he beats the shit out of people. He's a stunt driver turned getaway driver, which must happen all the time, and a good reason why his driving is so good. First up, lovely jacket, very iconic. Now there is a getaway scene at the start of the movie where you learn a lot more about Mr. Driver and his ways.
If I drive for you, you give me a time and a place. I give you a 5-minute window.
But the second car chase is a bit more exciting. It's in the daytime, Oscar Isaac strutting towards a robbery, but then he gets shot, which makes Ryan really bloody jump, bless him. Now he's got to get away with Christina Hendricks in the back. Straight into a bit of driving on the wrong side here, but it's a pretty sparse road, so I'm not that impressed. But then we get to a classic handbrake turn into some backwards driving. Now I'm impressed. I think he does this to avoid getting spun by the other guy because he's trying to hit that specific spot. And it leads to a nice reverse J-turn that surprises the pursuer into crashing into a barrier. See ya. It's a nicely done scene, if a little short. So Ryan is clearly a professional here. He's meticulous and he wears driving gloves.
String back just gives you a bit of extra purchase.
And another professional who wears gloves in a slightly more ridiculous movie is, in number 3, The Transporter. It's Jason Statham as Frank Martin, and he is very pernickety, just like the Gosling is as a getaway driver. You've got a finite amount of time, and look, if you are a little bit overweight, you have to kill a member of your own team. This brutal violence is a little bit at odds with comedy things later on, like them being sick out of a window. Again, more comedy insisting on seatbelts, but what about that dead man on the street? Anyway, lots of quick cuts in this chase, mostly showing things like changing gears, because again, manuals are cooler and I guess help with navigating these windy roads. There's a bit more comedy bants in a horrific accent. Jason, where were you supposed to be from?
See what I mean about the shots?
And then our first J-turn, kind of, and it leads into some wrong way driving, I think. The cuts are so constant in this scene that it's actually hard to tell, to be honest. Then there's an up onto a pavement bit. And then Jason gets very unfortunate with this undercover policeman who also happens to be an absolute demon behind the wheel. He then gets inexplicably lucky with this bollard popping up. Before, again, some unnecessary comedy. Look, I guess the point here is to distract from the fact that he's working for some cold-blooded killers. So far, he's not been too much of a demon, though. He basically went one way down the road, turned around, and they caught up with it. So what's he planning on with this bridge now? Inexplicable good fortune again with this car transporter coming down the road with a perfect size space, and the police just point their guns and don't fire when it's clear where he's going. Yep, there he goes. There is a nice touch here though to shoot the lever to knock a car into a police, and then he takes off, but he's still got a load of police on him after all of that. So once he gets to this little train yard, he uses a classic trick, cut in front of a slow moving train. You really should have just done that at the start, unless, you know, benefit of the doubt, it was all timed to perfection, although I doubt it. The Transporter series obviously ends up being much more ridiculous, as these kinds of movie franchises tend to do. And the reason Jason Statham's Frank is such a good driver is because he's ex-special forces, and some other drivers who are all ex-military, and in a polar opposite car chase, in that it's actually amazing, is in number 2, Ronin. Oh, that's a nice trailer title. Here we have a bunch of mercenaries, none of whom can be trusted, having to steal a MacGuffin briefcase, which all lead to some iconic displays of driving, especially this one through Paris, which was praised for its realism. So, to start with, again we have the manual transmissions, obviously. In this one you can really feel the speed that they're driving around the city, especially with these narrow streets filled with cars. It doesn't really come across though when they get to this roundabout. I'm sure it's very hard to get around at that speed, but it looks a little bit slow, to be honest. We then have a teeny bit of pavement driving, before a random car falls off a transporter, which I think happened because it had to stop suddenly, but to be honest, good scene, but that bit is edited quite badly. De Niro throughout this entire scene looks like he's about to throw up from his driving, especially as he power slides into this tunnel. And then following that, there's a remarkable display of realism as they're all using their high beams in the tunnel just to let people know they're coming. Very considerate. Finally, the police get involved. Well, no, that went well. And then there's a random explosion to spice it up a bit. We then get a lovely handbrake turn from De Niro, doing a kind of 270, which is very nice. I was actually getting a little bit bored, so this is very welcome. During the scene, there's a lot of collateral damage. The public are getting their cars wrecked left, right, and centre. And look, that man lost his papers. Oh no. There's some music that kicks in now randomly, I guess signifying we're near the end, but not before some driving the wrong way up a road. It's got to be done. Still using the high beams though for safety, very sensible Natasha McAlone. Oh, now you put your seatbelt on, Stellan Skarsgård. I wonder if that will come into play later on. De Niro still looks terrified throughout, and then we get some gunfire. Again, taking out civilians, and that is quite a big explosion. The wrong way driving here though really makes you feel like you're in that car. Great direction throughout. And Natasha then turns her windscreen wipers on. I reckon in a panic she meant to indicate or something and just hit the wrong lever. We then get people flashing their lights telling them they're going the wrong way. Sensible, yes, I guess, but it's not like they didn't know already. And then we get to the end. Jean Reno shoots a tyre out. We get a classic car roll, but this time into a construction site. Stellan's had his seatbelt on though, so at least he can run away. It was Chekhov's seatbelt. So even though Natasha McAlone was in a rather nice Beamer, De Niro was just driving a Peugeot, a very ordinary car. Which brings us to another realistic car chase with a very normal car. It's Matt Damon in our final degree, the Bourne Identity, in a Mini of all things. And not like a new BMW Mini, an old grimy manual one. Luckily, Jason Bourne is an absolute weapon, quite literally, and he can move that little car like it's a part of him. This whole scene feels gritty and raw and believable, like a lot of this film. You think it's all legit, well, mostly. I love that before the scene, he's scoping out the map of the area, figuring out where to go, and he mentions that the tyres are splashy, whatever that means. And there's a lovely last chance trope. Get out now, or you're on this ride with me. And of course she stays with him. It's Matt Damon.
Last chance, Murray.
The music here is perfect as well, infinitely better than The Transporter and Ronin. And you know you're in an old car immediately with this one, as there's a massive clunk as he changes gears. again, manuals are cooler. So it kicks off with a nice little J-turn, and I love that it's raining, so he has the windscreen wipers on throughout, on purpose this time. And the rain means that Jason can sling that car around with some lovely power slides. The cuts in the vehicle to him spinning the wheel really make it feel like he's genuinely controlling the car throughout these tight spots. And that's what's inventive here. It feels like Jason's making the most of that car's size, taking them down alleys, up on the pavement. It seems like the smart thing to do to get away from the bigger police cars. It's so good how Matt Damon delivers this next line.
So...
What?
we got a bump coming up.
Yeah, no shit, Jason Bourne. We get the standard example of pavement driving here to avoid that car pulling out, and then he even does a bit of drifting in his bloody Mini. Straight into our next trope, driving the wrong way, but this time it's done with a load of dodging traffic. I think we can all appreciate Marie's groan. Some innocents here get their cars wrecked. What if they've got to pay the excess on their insurance? Will we ever know? The editing also makes it unclear what knocks this guy off. He basically just gives up. Look, Bourne's too good and I don't get paid enough for this. I'm just going to lie down. I do love the idea that Jason's skill will get him through this traffic like this, and it means that only one bike can make it through to follow him. But unfortunately we get the only unbelievable bit. He fucking disappears. So he's not that good and that car could not stop that quick. But, you know, props to this scene. He got away from all of those cars chasing him over time. Not like Baby, who did all the fancy stuff and then there was still 10 of them. So as you've seen, there are some staple sub-tropes of the badass driving trope. You got driving on a pavement, collateral damage, shifting gears, driving backwards, the J-turn, power sliding, and going the wrong bloody way. I'll give a special mention to the glaringly obvious omission from this list, the Fast and Furious movies. Those boys and girls were all street racers and precision drivers in the first movie before they somehow inexplicably became super spies. And as a result, there are some really good chases. So many, to be honest, that it needs its own list. And finally, an extra special mention to the best getaway driver ever, Tyrone from Snatch. He's a natural.
A natural fucking idiot.
Alright, so that's our badass driver trope deep dive done. Let me know your favourite badass driver moment that I've missed. There's a few, and any of these you don't like, come at me. I'm looking at you, Transporter. For now though, this has been a 6 Degrees Trope Deep Dive, and I'm Danny Baker, and I will see you later.